A fact of life, and one of its challenges, is that we only live in our moment. We are aware of our history, but only experience our own small moment in that history. We usually lack the perspective to understand how and the extent to which our individual lives have been shaped by events that occurred long ago, long before any of us lived. That kind of perspective can be helpful as we approach the high holidays, when perspective on our lives is the goal of the season. One of the few instances of how ancient prayer was worded appears at the beginning of this week's Parsha, and it helps to give us some perspective. The Torah commands that at the beginning of each harvest season, that some of the produce is to be presented to the priest in charge at that time as a gift to God. And it then tells us what actual words those presenting the produce would say, and it goes as follows. My father was a fugitive Aramean. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there, but he became a great and very populous nation. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. They imposed heavy labor upon us. We cried to the Lord, the God of our fathers, and the Lord heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery, and our oppression. The Lord freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm, and awesome power, and by signs and portents. He brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Wherefore I now bring the first fruits of the soil, which you, O Lord, have given me. That is the full version of the passage, which is read in part during the Pesach Seder. But whereas we read it there in Seder to introduce the theme of wandering and enslavement in Egypt, in its original setting here in Tavo, it serves a different purpose. By relating the current abundance of the harvest to the giver's historical experience, the farmer would affirm that the same God who had brought his ancestors out of Egypt was the same God responsible for the success of their harvest. We should adapt that approach in our own prayers as well. Whenever we say the words at the beginning of the Amidah, the God of our ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, and so forth, we are acknowledging that we are part of a continuum of practice and experience as Jews. The same God who spoke to them speaks to us. The same God who accepted their first fruit offerings in the land of Israel accepts our prayers. The same God whose people established a sacred dwelling place in the land of Israel for God is also our God. By feeling that our lives are linked in deed and belief to so many others, and to the same God, can provide us a much deeper experience of prayer generally, and the high holidays in particular. A Shabbat Shalom.